Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Here's how you can raise member satisfaction by 25%. Before we get started, I'd like to announce a few brief housekeeping details. Today's session is being recorded, and an online archive of today's event will be available a few days after the call. You will receive an email from AHIP that will ask if you would like to receive the archive. Please respond to the email if you would. I'd like to remind you of AHIP's Antitrust Statement and ask that you reference it in the handout section at the bottom of your screen. The Antitrust Statement prohibits us from discussing competitively sensitive information. Please keep in mind you may ask a question at any time during the presentation by typing your question into the question and answer area on the right of your screen. Once complete, please press Enter. Please refresh your screen at any time if you are having trouble seeing the slides presented in today's webinar. ACI will also be attending the upcoming AHIP Institute and Expo 2018 in San Diego from June 20th to 22nd. If you'd like to learn more and speak with a payment expert, please stop by booth number 532 or schedule time to meet during the show. We're very fortunate to have with us today Farhan Faruqi and Steve Kramer. Farhan Faruqi serves as Manager of Strategic Capability Implementation and Operations Management at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Farhan has over 12 years of consulting experience working in the various areas of the system development life cycle in a variety of industries. His philosophy of always engaging in new projects is that traditions, ways, and methodologies for current business processes are of the past. The challenge is to always address these methods and pairing it with new pragmatic thinking for tomorrow's customer in tomorrow's economy. Steve Kramer serves as Vice President of Product Management at ACI Worldwide. Steve has served as Vice President of Product Management and Strategy at major players in the payments market for the past 16 years. I'd like to turn the floor over to Steve.
Thank you, Catherine, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to AHIP for helping us put this together. Very excited to be part of this webinar today and to have Farhan on the phone as our expert here about boosting member satisfaction. So we've got a lot of things that we want to cover here. You can see the agenda here. I won't go up obviously line by line through here, but we'll give you some background on Blue Cross, kind of what their challenges were. Farhan will give us some real-life stories about what challenges they faced, how things worked for them, and what they ended up doing. And then we'll kind of dive into some industry data, tell you what we see trending in the marketplace based on some surveys that we've seen out there and surveys we've done, and give you some real-time payments ideas as well, what's going on in real time, and finally end with some key takeaways. So with all that, getting the introductions out of the way, let's jump right in. And first of all, I want to welcome Farhan. Farhan, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I just wanted to ask you, before we get into this, right, everyone knows the name Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? Name anybody in the industry or outside the industry knows. But if you could just give us a little background about your area, a little overview of the business and some of the challenges you guys were looking at.
Sure, yeah, Steve. So I am part of the individual business market, and, Blue Cross of Blue Shield typically, as you can imagine, it's a very large company. We serve both individual, large group, mid group. We have Medicaid, Medicare, so the senior market, and then we have other ancillary services. So there's a variety of members that we service, and one of the, I think we'll probably get into some of the key, decisions we made a few years ago with the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, as many people know it as. Some of those influences, what we were preparing our business for, and the challenges we were experiencing at that time. We had very limited payment functions and ways members can engage us in comparison to the online experience your typical retail member has today, for example, with Amazon.com or any other online footprint, retail footprint that's out there. So it was a very big transition for us to really explore options for our members to really bridge that member experience they're accustomed to elsewhere. So, that's kind of like who we are as a Blue, across the state of Michigan, and we also service members outside the state of Michigan as well too.
Okay, so that's great. I appreciate the background. And you kind of touched on it a little bit during the intro, right? But, the slide here, right, boosting member engagement, boosting member satisfaction. When you dive down to it, what were some of the real problems you were really trying to solve here? I mean, what were you really after?
So we actually did a voice of the member. We actually reached out to our members, conducted a variety of surveys. So this was our marketing arm of the company. And basically this was trying to get a feel for a variety of experiences our members have on our website. So, if you look at, the traditional services, you can see your claims history, you can do some policy maintenance, you can do a variety of other tasks. Payment and billing was rated in the lower quartile of what the experience was. So our members were telling us they're not happy with the various payment functions we were offering, and it wasn't that much. To tell you where we were, we only had about 8 ways that members can engage with us, channels, and we only accepted ACH payment. So we weren't, we definitely were not on par with the retail experience our members were accustomed to. So that was a very big eye-opener for us. The other thing when I mentioned a little bit a while ago was the Affordable Care Act. So getting ready for this was for the 2013 open enrollment period, because at this point we were not legally allowed to underwrite. We were expecting an influx of membership, right? So our traditional ways would have amounted to a lot more calls, a lot more traffic to these limited ways our members could even engage us. And it was really a disaster ready to happen. And again, the member experience at that time wasn't all that great either. So this is what was driving some of these decisions to really, we have to look at a holistic solution, right? And we were facing situations, for example, a lot of members were almost covered by, they were almost subsidized, right? And they had just a few dollars, or even some members even had a few pennies left to satisfy their monthly premium balance. And if we didn't receive those payments, we were legally obligated to cancel that membership from CMS, right? So this is where, partnerships or implementing solutions, even with, like, for example, MoneyGram, incorporating MoneyGram into our payment solutions. So, folks can go to a CVS or a Walmart to satisfy their bills, right, or do it. But so introducing these various touch points beyond our traditional our call center or even our walk-in centers, we had to do more, and that has really, I think we'll get into a little bit later. It's paid off in dividends for us.
That's great, and we see that in a lot of places when we talk is that how can you broaden, right, your reach out to your consumers? How do you engage them outside of either outside of the traditional or outside of what you've done in the past, right? What are the other ways to reach out? And it's interesting to hear you say you started at 8. We'll get to it in a little bit in terms of how many you ended up with, but I think that's an interesting way to look at it, right? How many touch points do you have, but how many touch points do your consumers want to have, right? I think that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So then when you kind of compare it, now you got kind of what the challenges were there, right? And the problems you were trying to solve, but
yeah.
What were kind of the solutions you were looking into to raise the satisfaction?
Right. I mean, and for us, the first steps were to introduce credit card and debit card payments for us, right? It was to have some sort of a guest payment, without, not forcing people to set up an account with us and to, with an account number, satisfy their payment. It was really to have a robust IVR experience, and we were fortunate to incorporate one and also have a contact center that supports us from the ACI side. So one of the things was, and that all amounted to driving less calls. Our calls amounted to a significant portion of the chargebacks we got as a retail segment of the enterprise. And that, that allowed us to really, that improved our bottom line overall, as one of the things we improved in the member experience space. And some of the other things, touch points we wanted was a more integrated solution. We're divided between the HMO and PPO side of the business. So given how we were set up at the time and some of the legacy processes that we were using, it was a great opportunity for ACI to come out, understand our current state, and really propose a robust solution that allowed us to fit everything very nicely in the way we were existing, we were set up back then, and what that road, what the evolution since then is, right? There's definitely things we want to do more, and we have incorporated additional capabilities, and there's really, some major ones we're looking for in the future. Really embarking on this journey made us realize that there was so much to the bill presentment and the payment processing space that I think we probably didn't initially realize, right? As we start thinking more as a retailer, it really drives some of these strategic conversations, and really allows us to ask those questions, but also benefit from the capabilities that are out there on the existing platform.
Oh, that's great. I mean, we see this too, and we'll get into this a little bit more when we show some of the research. But yeah, increasing consumers' ways to interact with you and increasing the number of channels and making sure you're taking full advantage of those channels, we've seen across the board as a way to raise consumer satisfaction, whether it's in healthcare or other industries. Really across the board, we see it, that the more touch points you have, the more you, as we like to say, where you meet the consumer where they want to be met, right? It just raises that satisfaction. I'm curious, you said that, a few minutes ago, you started with like 8 or 10 different ways to pay. What are you up to now in terms of different ways you interact with your consumers?
I think we're like over about 31 now. You pick your flavor, Baskin Robbins, right? And our members responded about 87% of all our payments are in the form of a credit and debit card. So it showed us that our members were waiting for this type of a solution. So that switch over was really interesting for us to see. And then just to see how the different payment channels are utilized across different segments. We have some of our senior markets that are plugged in. We have other splits in our retail parts of the business. So really, it really gave us a understanding, because at the end of the day, when we look at it from a retail perspective, the member really wants to get the best information, shop. They want to be able to select their products and check out very, very quickly, right? And so this was, it was a huge learning experience for us, and a really deeper insight into our member behaviors and their preferences, and really the positive feedback we received from them was really reassuring. And now our payment and billing score is really fluctuating more in the upper quartile amongst other things now. So it's really, from an enterprise perspective, it's probably the least pain point of items or points of discussion that would arise from time to time.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned it on this call. We actually chatted about it earlier too. It's great that you guys looked at this holistically and generationally, I guess, as you described it, right? Different markets want to pay in different ways, and if you're not offering it, as you said, when you start offering debit, everything we see in the market, if you go to a millennial and say, "Great, get me your checkbook," they'll look at you like you have no idea what you're talking about, right? I don't know where the checkbook is, but they got their debit card there, right?
Right.
Makes a big difference, but it's a similar topic, right? If you're going into
exactly.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Right.
And as you said, there are channels there, senior market, maybe you do want call center or IVR or something, there are different ways, different touch points, right? I think it's great that you guys looked at it holistically and generationally as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, of course, we all like to talk about, everyone gets excited by a lot of this stuff, right? And, different ways to pay and different channels and different that. But the sense of urgency, right, to me is one of the challenges, right? How did you guys handle that? What created really that sense of urgency to act like now from a Blue Cross Michigan standpoint?
So I think at that time we were really looking at how to position the business. ACA was a big catalyst, I think a big wake-up call to all of us. That first year, there was a lot of unknowns. there was a lot of anticipation, and there was also at the same time we were trying to evolve into a more retail part of the business. No, you know, a lot of people when purchasing healthcare products don't you know, the retail experience is not necessarily envisioned as it is now with, you know, with competition, with customer expectations. You know, us actively engaging our members and trying to get constant feedback, that also helped prioritize some of these functions, right? And, you know, when we look at, you know, anytime there's a member has a call, usually that costs a lot more than in the long term than investing in self-servicing capabilities, right? So anytime where you can increase some of those self-serving capabilities, it's less calls, better member satisfaction, it's quick, and it really impacts your bottom line at the end of the day. So, but yeah, with the, you know, ACA, I would say what's a key catalyst to start thinking about this, and then also our voice of our customers was the other as well, and then also some of the bottom line objectives we had operationally. All that was, I think, you know, it wasn't just one. It was a, you know, accumulation of a variety of things, I would say.
So let me ask you the tough question, stuff we didn't rehearse, right? I'm sure Blue Cross, like every organization, you've got IT people just sitting around with their feet up, right, looking for work to do. You know, I'm guessing not. How are you able to prioritize your IT resources? Because that seems to be everyone's challenge, right, when they want to start enhancing some of these experiences.
No, I think the biggest birdie, I would say, or the key takeaway was that we included all our partners in our discussions with ACI. We had our finance partners there. We had our business readiness partners, you know, procurement, obviously, in other areas, and then our IT partners are right there. So they knew what was at stake for the business. They knew the objectives and kind of the guidelines, why those guidelines were established in our business case. So I think having them integrated in these initial discussions, being able to engage with both the ACI team on site and the folks that were on the phone as far as the technical team to answer any of these questions, it really helped propel us in the right direction, you know, simultaneously. So the internal alignment effort was probably not as intense, but it really came down to when we can execute. You know, we were able to get this on the roadmap on, you know, a variety of teams that supported this effort, from our membership and billing teams to IT to, you know, again, business readiness, and there's so many other partners, you know, in finance, treasury, and whatnot that helped us really get through the finish line. And I think that was really key. You know, the urgency, the explanation behind that urgency, and the question of how can you support and help us be a part of this kind of like this next evolution of our member experience.
That's great. So I'm curious what you did in terms of building the business case around this, right? Because, you know, obviously you're going to have some cost involved. How were you able to build that business case? What kind of things were you considering? And I think you even mentioned some of it, right, of pulling all the teams in to try and figure that out.
Right. The business case was really, you know, one of the biggest drainers operationally were the inbound calls, right, and that was only going to increase as you know, as ACA when ACA came about and throughout the progression in subsequent years. So, you know, adding more call centers or adding more customer service agents was not the cost-efficient way of doing things, right? So we had to come up with ways or identify ways, at least from where we were thinking about retail, explaining to kind of ACI at that point, like, you know, this is kind of like the desired member experience. And then when ACI came and really showed us that, you know, there are various ways of thinking about this, right? And really taking the time to understand the way we were currently set up, how we could get plugged into the ACI solution, and expanding this retail payment footprint to our members, right? And it was a very structured, phased approach, right? I mean, we didn't, again, given that there were current processes we had to maintain for certain reasons. This was a 5-phase approach. About if our first implementations was in November 2014, and we were probably done around April, May of 2015, right? Just again, that was unique to our environment and the way we were set up, right? And it was really, it was brilliant how the ACI technical resources, our sales support team were all in sync in helping us craft a solution and a roadmap, right? So that paid off. That paid off. Our internal investment was paid off in 10 months, and that's unbelievable. And this was a story that was communicated to our senior leadership, and no one could believe that. So it was incredible.
Wow.
The amount, how fast we were there, not only to reap our investment, but also the member satisfaction and the capabilities we delivered, and really excited about the future. We have an entire roadmap we're working with ACI on right now for our future member experience, and again, everyone here is really excited on kind of like the next big thing.
Well, wow, I mean, that's amazing. 10 months ROI is amazing. But let's get to the fun stuff, right? The future, as you said. What are some of the things you guys are contemplating in the future? Where do you think you're going next?
Right. So for us, it's really looking to adopt the complete V4 platform ACI, and for us, the gaps we need to fill is the key messages to members through email and text for payment failures, for example, or things that happen from time to time, and the recovery path, right? Being able to employ things like text to pay, and really fully integrating the ACI platform into the current capabilities that we have implemented right now. I think that will really drive our member satisfaction, around being able to move away from static monthly invoices to more dynamic ones where we could they could be we can send it through email or text, or we can put in different videos on their key messages, and it's really neat where we can send targeted messages and segment our members based on how what products are signed up for, or other things to consider. So that alone, I think, because that's really a member's communication with us is really through the monthly invoice they receive. We may send them 100 emails or bill inserts, but no, that visibility will not be anywhere close to that monthly invoice. So being able to move away from a static invoice is just that's just mind-boggling right now. The other thing is, really some interesting things in the future roadmap, with the integration with Amazon Alexa and, the Google Home, some of those futuristic capabilities, also, I think that falls under like some of the alternative payments, and how we might be able to integrate with like even Apple Pay or Google Pay. So it's really thinking beyond now, in providing better touch points to our members as technology is evolving, and really trying to maintain a very expeditious checkout process, both on a month-to-month basis, but also even at our point of enrollment, where we've integrated ACI into our enrollment tool. We're able to collect our first month's payment right then and there as well. So there's just been, like I said, there's just like a plethora of features that we're looking at in the future roadmap. I think that will finally unify that member experience and further drive that member a better positive feedback from our members as well too.
Sounds like great stuff. I can't wait till I can say, Alexa, pay my Blue Cross bill. That'd be great. Appreciate a peek into the future for you. So I'm going to jump in now and kind of give a little bit more of what, from an ACI standpoint, what we see trending in the marketplace based on our research, based on what we've seen, and we'll come back to Faran for Q&A. So Faran, I appreciate all the info. It's phenomenal, especially the future stuff I'm excited about. So let's jump into a little bit here of what we see trending. It's, when you look out in the marketplace today, I mean, companies like Amazon are disruptors. We see it in the industry, and I think everybody on this call probably realizes, as Amazon's move into healthcare, or their kind of entree in that market, right? What does that actually mean? Amazon doesn't tend to just come in and take over, right? They tend to disrupt the market and make people start thinking differently, pushing people to innovate. I like to think of the Amazonation of payments as, shouldn't it be that easy to pay things the way it is in Amazon? Believe me, I hate how easy Amazon makes it. That whole one-click thing is a little dangerous for me. But you start thinking about that. What does that really do in other industries, and why can't other industries be that way as well, right? So we kind of looked at it as a whole, and we kind of stepped back and went, why do people want to come in here and redesign the whole billing and payment experience? Like, what are they looking to do? And we see a number of different positives. I mean, you've heard from Ron about boosting member satisfaction, and we've seen direct numbers that tie into, as you improve that billing and payments experience, seeing those customer satisfaction numbers increase. And you're from the bottom part to the top, right, in terms of customer satisfaction in that area, which is great. But also just savings, savings on document delivery, printing, throwing in the mail versus electronifying. Everything we see in industries, especially in healthcare, the more electronic options you can give a consumer, the more likely they are to stay electronic, right, and get you away from paper and calling and sending in checks and that sort of thing, which tend to be so much more expensive. And then security and compliance. It's top of everyone's mind these days, what to do about security, what to do about compliance. More and more companies are looking for a third-party partner to say, look, why don't we go to industry experts in this who can usually drive down our costs in that way? We're not sitting there having to go through a PCI audit. We can rely on our vendor to do that, right? And we can just be very lightweight in terms of what our compliance needs are from that area and in all compliance needs as well. So we're going to hit our first poll here of the day. I think we didn't warn you folks who are on the line here that this is an interactive session, but we would like to take a quick poll. When you think about billing and payment options that you're most interested in, which one of these kind of jumps out at you as this is the one I'm most interested in? Catherine, if you can start the poll, and we can kind of see what people say is the most compelling to them. Is it mobile payments? Is it the need to jump in and do recurring payments, get away from just one time and let people do recurring payments? What about real-time payments? And we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by real-time payments, but you've probably seen some of the news out there about things that are happening faster ability to take payments. And mobile e-billing, the ability to get that e-bill down to where the consumer is living, which is on their mobile phone. So if we can run the poll here, and then, can kind of see what the results are from there. All right. And then if we can take a look at those results. Up there. Apologies. Don't know if you can all see the results of the poll, but what we've seen here is the top two were mobile payments and recurring credit card. Tend to be the top two things that people are looking at in terms of their overall billing and payment options, which is great. I think mobile payments, everybody these days is concerned about mobile. I think everyone's seeing that that's where people are living. And, recurring, it tends to be such a high customer satisfaction, right? The set it and forget it approach of recurring credit card payments. So let's dive into a little bit more of the research. So when you look at, what are the trends, the current developments, and you obviously recognize a lot of these things here, right? Things we just talked about. But we had Open do a survey with us, with healthcare services companies, say, which one of these things are in development? Which one do you want to offer in the future? SMS text messaging, tends to be very high up there. It's such a ubiquitous platform. You can think about even for yourself when you're traveling and, suddenly a bill is due and how do you handle it? But, you have your phone with you, you'll get a text message right away, right? You'll be able to see and make that payment right from there. So obviously anything around mobile tends to be high up on everybody's list. But, what a lot of people tend to forget about, you can see it on that fourth section there, is e-billing to the mobile, right? More and more when you survey people, you're finding that the mobile device is their number one instrument and the number one entree into the internet. And yet people don't think about the fact that I have an e-billing solution, but have I optimized it for my mobile device? And if you haven't, well, why aren't you getting the adoption rate there? Well, it could be that the thing you want to push out to consumers isn't optimized for where they're living their lives today, which is on that mobile phone, right? And then real time we'll talk about in a little bit as well. And, you heard Ron talk about, the thing all the way on the right, Internet of Things, connecting it to things like an Amazon Alexa or a Google Home. Really interesting stuff, what you can start doing once you start giving consumers that ease of entree into services. I think people are just starting to scratch the surface on what can be done there. But you can see the percentages here. I mean, from mobile up in, 70, 80% of companies are either in development or want to be offering that. And, even when you get down to, installment payments, you're still over, about 50%. Half the companies out there are either have it in development or looking to do it. So if you're not thinking about these, this is what, some of your colleagues in the marketplace are looking at today and what tends to be on top of mind. So, we've kind of been making the point about increasing mobile payment, increasing member satisfaction. And you've heard me harp on it. I do this a lot in terms of harping on mobile, of a way to satisfy your customers and raise that satisfaction. We said it before, people are living the day-to-day on the mobile phones. And are you giving them all of these options that you can see here on that mobile device, right? Are you letting them see consolidated emails? Can they pay there? Can you push new information to that consumer on their mobile device so that they can see what's coming up without having to click and go onto a website that may not be optimized, right, and all of that. As you start tying them in there and letting them work entirely on their mobile device, it can help in that retention and that satisfaction. One of the areas that we've really seen it is in billing, and so you start thinking about that consolidated bill. And, you can see here, is that consolidated bill being served up in a way the consumer is operating today? If they're on their PC, great. Most of us have been in this market for enough years, right? We can serve up a bill on our home computer, on people's home computers. But then you start thinking about all the different ways consumers are coming in and possibly seeing those bills. People walking around with a tablet or people on their phone. And again, is that bill being shown in a way that works for that consumer on that device? But it actually goes even beyond that. It's not only just the bill, it could be the consolidated bill. Can you put all the statements in one place for them? But then the other thing that I think a lot of people miss, and we've seen it in a lot of our surveys, billing is a way where you're reaching out to your consumer, right? This is a touch point to your consumer every single month. Are you taking full advantage of that? You heard Ron start talking about some of the stuff they're looking at down the road. Here's a chance to talk to your consumer. Here's a chance that something they're going to look at, right? It's their bill. They're going to open it up. They want to see how much they owe. They want to interact with it. So are you targeting them there? Are you giving them personalized messages? Are you giving them content that's useful to them? Even videos that might be useful to them. And there are ways of targeting those messages to those specific consumers so that you're serving up content that's useful to them. We hear a lot in the marketplace about people going down the e-bill route and saying, we reach a threshold where adoption just stops, right? We get to a plateau, we increase, and then it just plateaus. How come? And a lot of the times what you see is, what's in it for the consumer? The consumer pulls up a bill, it looks either just like the paper bill or in many cases, not even as good as the paper bills. The consumer's going, well, why should I bother with this, right? What's in it for me if I go over to an e-bill? But we can start offering a personalized, targeted content to them where they start seeing that there's more value in that electronic bill. Now they start seeing the value, and now you start increasing that adoption of the e-bill channel. Recurring credit card payments, we've seen this. This was a direct numbers from a healthcare partner of ours, where they were just saying, just by offering the recurring credit card payments, they saw that as 50% would stay at an average of 2 months longer with them, just because they started offering recurring credit card payments. So as I said, this is a real client business case that we've done work with. And when they just did the math, holy cow, it was such an easy ROI to look at, and said, you know what, if we can just put something out there that increases our customer retention even a little bit, what a dramatic increase that can have on our bottom line. It makes the ROI discussion very, very quick, right? Recurring credit cards, and we see this both in healthcare, but we see it across the industries. This is the stickiness factor, right? Offering something to consumers, they can do a set it and forget it. They don't have to, it's not a hassle to them anymore. It just runs. And I'm a big adopter of this myself, right? I don't want to think about bills anymore. Just set it up, let it pay, don't bother me again. But then the best part is, now I'm staying with you because the bill's just paid. It's easy for me. There's no work that I have to do. So it can help with that whole attrition issue as well. So that's another one of the areas. And you saw that in the poll earlier, that a number of you are looking at that. It really is about the holistic view, right? member liability options, how do you collect on all the different ways? Whether it's you're scheduling the payments, allowing the funding to be chosen, whether getting alerts, and that's another area that we see a lot that really needs to drive that consumer adoption, right? What is it about consumers, you push out a bill, but then they forget about it, and now if you have to call them, think of the cost there, they're viewing it as a hassle, now I'm getting bugged by it. But if you can start sending out email reminders, text reminders, stuff that just say, hey, just don't forget you've got a bill due, or hey, go take a look at your bill, it's now available online. Here they are, all in one place. It's all in one thing. You're getting rid of the friction in the marketplace for that consumer. And again, really, we see this tremendous drive in customer satisfaction as a result. Real-time payments, really interesting topic. So you've probably read some of the articles out there about real-time payments. You've probably seen some of the companies out there talking about it. So there's a company, the clearinghouse that's owned by the banks, that's doing a real-time good funds model, payments, funds move in seconds. Companies like Zelle or somebody like that can push funds immediately from the bank. And as these payments start becoming more mainstream, very often something like Zelle starts off as a P2P, a person-to-person type payment, but as it starts moving into the market and becoming more mainstream and allowing you to start collecting from consumers in real time or pushing to consumers in real time should you need to disperse, a huge driver of customer satisfaction. And you start thinking about what services or what other options can I offer now? If I know that I can get funds from a consumer or to a consumer in seconds and it's guaranteed good funds, well, now what can I offer that consumer? If a consumer has a policy, they look, I want to get my policy done today. Okay, great. Here's a way to pay it. We'll have the funds immediately. You'll be covered immediately. Everything's good. Or in a collections market where you're struggling to collect good funds from a consumer, what a great way to collect those funds. It really is just starting out now. Clearinghouse went live last September with their model. Zelle is running in a P2P model, but they've talked about getting more involved in allowing consumers to pay or allowing consumers to receive via Zelle. So I think you're going to see a huge growth of this over the next number of years. And it's time to start thinking about what can I do now that real-time payments is becoming a reality here. The other thing that's so important, and you hate to talk about it, right? But, studies are showing that payer data, unfortunately, is getting stolen. I was talking to someone just the other day, and you kind of wonder, are people almost getting fatigued by this, right? Oh, great, another data breach, right? But you don't want to be, an old colleague of mine used to say to employees in this area who are around security, don't be famous. You don't want to be the guy in the news explaining why this happened. So you need to start thinking about, what am I doing about that payment data to ensure it's secure, to ensure that I'm meeting all the compliance standards that are out there? Am I working with a third party that knows what they're doing, that's an expert in this industry? And can that help me actually drive down my compliance costs and also give me a little bit more peace of mind, right? That, I know that my payment data is safe. This is an actual statistic of 17% of payers have had their data stolen in the past 12 months. Just a scary figure. And you all know the names. You've read them in the news, right? You don't want to be that next one in the news, neither do I, obviously, right? That you want to be making sure that your data is secured, your data is safe, and that includes things like tokenization, encryption, making sure they're PCI compliant. All of those things need to be thought about as you start looking at, what do I need to do down the road in terms of my payments and how I'm going to work with my payment data. And here are a couple of ways we've seen people do it, right? How do you limit where that payment data is stored? Are there ways that consumers can key in data rather than speak it, so I don't have to worry about call centers? Making sure everything's tokenized so that nothing is in clear text, I'm never dealing with card numbers themselves, and putting stuff up in the cloud, right? Making sure that I'm not storing that payment data. It's in some kind of private cloud where it's my data, it's tokenized, it's encrypted, and I'm not going to have to worry about my data being hit down the road. And my consumers aren't either. Again, giving my consumers peace of mind. We're talking about boosting customer satisfaction. I think nothing lowers that number more than getting that email that says your card number may have been compromised. So something really to think about down the road. Making sure that slide advanced. There we go. Nope, sorry. There we go. Apologies for that. So I want to kind of summarize here, give you some quick takeaways of what we've seen here, talk to you about business cases, then we're going to open it up for Q&A. I think we have a bunch of questions sitting out there, probably more for Faran than me. He's much more interesting than I am. But what are the big takeaways that you've seen so far, right? How do you respond to member demand? How do you make sure you're meeting their consumers where they want to be met? And then the urgency around that as more and more players come into market, as more and more innovation comes around this market, how do you respond to that and make sure that what the consumers are looking to do, whether it's pay by debit card, set up recurring, receive things via email or text, get things on my phone, that you're actually meeting that consumer's demand where they want to be met today. And how do you increase those capabilities and the number of touch points? You heard Ron say they went from like 8 or 10 to like 31 different touch points, which is spectacular, right? Because the more touch points you offer to consumers, the more satisfaction you're going to get from those consumers. As we've been saying, the more you're going to meet them where they want to be met. And start thinking about now. I mean, with 29 enrollment coming up, it's time to start thinking about what do we need to do? What do we want to get in place so that when we do have the open enrollment, we're ready for those consumers and we're going to meet the consumers where they're looking to be met. We can actually help you build. You can actually get your own customized business case here, and there's ways to look at this of how to build it. You heard Ron talk about it. I asked him directly, like, how'd you build that business case? And there's a number of different ways of looking at this, from consolidating your billing to how your customer satisfaction scores, the operational efficiency, the recurring that you saw from another vendor, another colleague of ours in this market, and compliance saves as well, of how you can build this entire business case. So we're going to put another quick poll up there, Catherine, if you do that for me, please. In terms of, when are you looking to build your own customized business case of how you can improve your ROI and with consolidated building or other enhancements? So if you just want to answer the poll quickly, you're looking immediately in the next couple of weeks, next month, next 6 months, what are you looking to do in terms of building that case and improving the ROI overall, and as we started from here, improving your overall member satisfaction. So I'll give it another moment or two, let you answer the poll. And then we'll turn it over to the moderator and let us do some Q&A.
Thank you.
Catherine, are you on the line?
Time we're going to address some questions. Yes, can you not hear me?
I can now. Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, can hear you now. Great.
We're going to address some questions. Okay, great. So our first question is, given the scalable solution in supporting exchange enrollment growth, what was the biggest lesson learned? I think that's for
Ron. I think that's for you.
Sorry, I was on mute here. The biggest lesson learned, I would say, was that we implemented the ACI solution congruently with our legacy processes in place, right, from those systems. If we had a way, I would say, and I think timing was not in our favor at that time, but if that's not an issue, I would highly advise seeing if there is a seamless transition off of current legacy processes, systems, even business processes that support those systems, and fully integrate the ACI solution. One, it would be much quicker. Two, it would definitely be much cheaper as far as internal costs go for implementation. And I think the members or the customers would see the value much far more incrementally, and because you're able to really provide that seamless integration as well as all the features that are available to the members. So we are still striving towards that direction. But yeah, if there is a way to fully integrate starting day one, I think you will get the best value and the best bang for your buck.
Steve, I think the next question is for you. Card payments include fees on transaction. The cost of card payment is perceived to be expensive. Can you justify the added expense to card payment?
That's a great question. And we get this question a lot, right? Hey, I take ACH today, or I take checks in the mail. Those are cheap, cards, you have interchange, it's more expensive. How can we justify paying it? The way we talk about that a lot is you need to look holistically, right, at the whole cost. So everyone says, oh, an ACH is cheap, and that's true, right? An ACH is not a very expensive payment transaction, except there's nothing guaranteed about an ACH, right? You can take an ACH and it can have insufficient funds and bounce back 2 or 3 days later, and you also get, unauthorized and things like that. And then what's the cost to you when that happens? In terms of having to reach back out to that consumer, probably with a call center call, having to try and get another payment method from them, the customer satisfaction experience of, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with you again, I thought I already made that payment. And secondly, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, we've seen average call times drop significantly when things like debit are offered. Because, you're on the phone, and I would like everyone on this call to think about it. If I said to you right now, hey, quickly, give me your routing and account number, how many of you either know it or have your checkbook with you here at work today? And the answer is probably very few of you. But if I said to you, hey, can you give me your debit card number, I'm betting just about everyone on this call could pull that out and give me their debit card number within seconds. So we've seen average hold times, average call times drop when you start taking debit, because that's what people have on them. They're not going, oh my God, I don't know where my checkbook is. Can you call me back? I'll call you back later. So when we've looked at the entire business case of NSFs, unauthorized, hold times, call times, all of that all in, suddenly you start going, you know what, the cost of the card really starts dropping, because when you take a debit card, right, the funds are going to be good unless the consumer charges it back, which is pretty rare in this industry. And really then the costs become much, much more competitive. You really start seeing, oh, wow, not only is the cost coming down, but in terms of customer satisfaction, that's also going up. So it really is about looking at the cost all in, holistically, and not just singly, just at the one little, what's the actual interchange cost versus an ACH cost.
Next question, I believe this is back to Farhan. Did you use a standardized survey tool to measure experience, or did you conduct a custom survey? Farhan, you might be on mute.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, I was on mute. But yeah, the key tools I believe our marketing folks used were Insight and Foresee. And then there was also an intake from our website, Facebook page as well. And then we were also able to generate some reports from our inbound calls in our contact center. So it was really a culmination of a variety of touch points that we put together, like some of these data points and reports for our leadership as far as what those pain points were around payment and billing.
Next question, also for Farhan, do you utilize other avenues to get feedback from members besides surveys, such as in-person focus groups?
We do, for payment and billing, not really. I think we do it more on like product development side. But one of the things we're incorporating, or since last year, is the Salesforce tool, right? And we're really looking to see if there's effective way of getting communication from our agents in the field, as well as our HPAs. And then there's also a internal way, there's like this messaging process as well that at least our internal HPAs and some of the feedbacks we receive, like on the other channels, such as like our website, even our Facebook and other, that we were able to generate some insights and reports on as well too.
Next question, gentlemen, I'm going to put out there for either one of you. What are some member engagement mistakes healthcare insurers made, and how can we learn from them?
So I think the biggest thing is what I said at the beginning. If there is a way for, it's usually better to look at the solution holistically and to implement it holistically, even if you have to wait a little bit, right? Because in our lessons learned, again, it was a lot more expensive because we had to maintain two different processes, two different systems, but still maintain some level of member experience. So we then although we delivered tremendous value to our members compared to where we were before, we certainly had a better opportunity to deliver a lot more and a lot more on par with what the retail experience of these members are today, right? Because for most people, they're looking at retail as that Amazon.com or eBay.com type experience, right? So that would be my takeaway, because the complication was involved in more IT teams at the various entities. So on our side, and at some of the legacy processes we had on their side, on the ACI side. So it made it a lot more complicated and a lot more expensive. So again, there's better value to be realized from implementation costs, from delivering better value to the members or to the customers. If you really look at this holistically, and it really does make sense when you start going through some of the offerings in relation to where the business is.
And I guess
that helps.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing that I'd add, and I think Ron, your group did a great job on this, which is, and I think you kind of touched on it, right? Getting everybody involved right from the front, all the different groups, right? From implementation group, IT, marketing, member engagement, all of the different groups coming together early on, I think goes a long way to actually making projects like this successful and launching them into the market faster. And I think the other thing that a lot of companies don't do, and we, I harped on this earlier, so, I may sound a little bit like a broken record, is considering the mobile channel. They'll say, well, yeah, you can get to our mobile website, right? But, you want to go, it's more than that, right? It's in many cases, a lot of people thinking, mobile first, right? What does the actual delivery look like on the mobile device, and how can you improve that? So I think those are two of the other lessons that we've seen.
Right.
Very interesting. And our next question. What benchmark did you use to know when you were in the upper quartile for payment billing scores? And I think this goes to you.
Good question. So this was actually in relation to all activities that take place on our website, right? It's from quoting, enrollment, payments, claims history, contact preferences even maybe. So that when you look at the 15, 20 different things a member can do on your website, is rating them independently. Basically, what was the ease of use, the suggestions members had, so it was really in relation to all the other tasks a member can do on our site.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. Thank you. And that's all the time we have for questions today. So for our audience, if we haven't responded to your question, we will follow up with you after today's event. Thank you, presenters, for that great presentation and for sharing your thoughts with us today. We'd also like to thank our audience for participating in today's conference. As a reminder, ACI will be attending the upcoming AHIP Institute and Expo 2018 in San Diego. If you're planning to attend, please stop by booth 532 or schedule a time to meet with their payment expert during the show. That concludes this webinar. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.